do it like we did yesterday. Reset.
It's going, hold on a second, it's going to go live on YouTube here.
All right,
so.
stand by everyone. I'm going to do a brief intro.
All right, guys, we're going here.
Are we live? All right, hello everyone. My name is Steve Bachmiller. I'm the City Zoning Administrator. Welcome to the first virtual meeting of the Hagerstown Historic District Commission. Sitting around the table here in City Hall, I'm Steve Bachmiller, City Zoning Administrator. To my right, which would be to your left. Yeah, sorry, they got us on a reversed image. Is Planning Director Kathy Marr. On the other side of the table, Recording Secretary Debbie Calhoun, and our IT wizard for today is Paul Falk. We do have a couple of administrative things we need to do in the front end before we start to get to cases, and that includes amendments to the bylaws to deal with this emergency situation. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Chairman, Michael Gear.
All right, my name is Michael Gear. As Chairman, I call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Historic District Commission to order this 23rd day of April 2020. There is a quorum present. The roster of the staff to the commission, of the commission members, and the technical posts that they fill in accordance with the requirements of the Hagerstown zoning ordinance are on file with the City of Hagerstown, are available on request to any applicant, and are hereby made a part of the legal record of every application heard today. All decisions rendered are based on the Secretary of Interior standards and guidelines as adopted by the City of Hagerstown. Each decision is made on a case-by-case basis and is not intended to be precedent-setting. At this point, if you have any cell phone or other electronic devices, please make sure that we have those somewhat quiet. There are two types of cases: consent agenda items and design review. For consent agenda, I'll ask, I guess, anybody in our audience if they have any concerns with those. If no issues, then we'll ask the commission members to state any objections to those particular cases. If not, then blanket approve those particular cases, and those applicants can leave the meeting. For design review, when the case is called, please state your name and address for the record. There will be a brief synopsis of the application by the staff consultant. After that, the floor will be turned over to the applicant for any further elaboration. After that, commission members will then discuss the case prior to rendering a decision on that application. At this time, we have minutes which we should be able to go ahead and approve before we get to the bylaw adjustment. We have minutes from, I'll find the right one, March 12th, 2020. Any revisions, corrections be made to those? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion to adopt.
I so move.
All right, we got a, is there a second?
Yes, Leslie.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those signify approval of the minutes by saying aye, hopefully one at a time.
Aye.
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 All right, motion carries. At this time, we need to consider an amendment to the bylaws to address this particular state of emergency. At this point, Mr. Bachmiller, can you give us some background, please?
Yes, in order for you to hold a meeting like this, virtually it has to be included in your rules of procedure. We're doing this with all of the boards, the Planning Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals have both done this. The proposed amendment to the bylaws, which is proposed Article 11, is essentially the same through all three of the boards, just modified slightly for each individual one. Basically, this gives this body the authority to conduct its hearings through a virtual platform. It does, other than that, all other rules of procedure remain in full force and effect. There's also an automatic expiration provision. So this provision is only in effect for the purposes of the national emergency, and it's once the mayor has determined that the state of emergency has expired, it will automatically expire 45 days thereafter. And it doesn't mean that you cannot, if you wanted to make further amendments, at your next meeting or 2 meetings downrange or whatever, but we needed just to get this in place to have this first meeting. And we did build in an automatic expiration into it, but it doesn't mean that you couldn't adopt such provision as a permanent rule if you saw fit. To be a participant in the meeting, you have to have at least a minimum of 2-way audio connection. You don't have to participate visually, but you have to be able to hear and you have to be able to talk. The participant. Public and the press are prohibited from attending in person. In-person attendance by applicants and design professionals is also prohibited unless the chairman has determined that that there's a specific need, because it went to the case for one representative of the applicant to be in City Hall essentially on this picture on the frame, working with staff. We don't have any of that today. All of your applicants are contributing electronically, and none of them are here in City Hall today. And then a copy of this will be maintained for at least 6 months after the meeting. So there's a total of 7 sections. And again, it's written just to be able to get this meeting moving and on the record. If you want to make some changes later.
I move we approve it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, at this point, consent agenda items. We have one application that has been staff approval, looking for approval by the commission, HDC case 2020-07 for 919 Hamilton Boulevard for a fence, and then HDC case 2020-09 for 27 West Antietam Street for a parking lot. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to review those. I don't think we have anything from other clients right now listening in. I'm not sure if there's any way to document.
Adam Hager is on representing the applicant. However, if this is consent, you don't have any questions, he doesn't need to give any presentation. And it looks like Adam just unmuted himself.
Yeah, I figure I'll talk if you guys need me to talk.
All right. Commission members.
This is Bob. I lived at 921 Hamilton for several years, and the fence at 919 is installed and complete at this time.
Okay. All right. So if there's agreement to commission members, there's agreement, then we'll need a motion to adopt these particular consent agenda items.
I can make that motion. Whichever one of us you want. Okay, I'll read it. Mr. Chairman, I've reviewed the materials submitted in cases. So let me go back to the agenda. HDC 2020-07 and HDC 2020-09. And the associated staff reports and recommendations, and I've viewed the properties in question. The staff reports recommend approval of these applications as consistent with the applicable standards adopted by this commission, and no one has appeared at this hearing with concerns about issues with or objections to these applications. Therefore, I move that this commission adopt the staff evaluations and recommendations in these cases as its own and grant certificates of appropriateness to the applicants of cases HDC 2020-07 and HDC 2020-09.
All right, is there a second?
I'll
Second.
All right, it's been motion and seconded for the consent agenda approval. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, those applicants are free to leave the meeting.
Okay, Adam, you're done. Thank you.
Bye.
You guys, I appreciate it.
All right, next up would be design review. First case is HDC 2020-08 for 152 West Washington Street for signage.
15 by 28.
I believe that's Mr. Martin.
Mr. Martin, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay.
You can state your name and address for the record, please.
Dean Martin, 345 East Antietam, and I have with me the lead designer. I'll let him introduce himself.
I'm James Sheets.
All right, this is HDC case 2020-08. The applicant is Darren Sweeney. Property is located at 152 West Washington Street. This is in the downtown local historic district. The building is an A resource. It's a significant building to the character of the district and may qualify for National Registry listing individually. This is also known as the Congressman James Roman House on West Washington Street. Design guidelines are pages 37 to 41 of the downtown guidelines. Description of work and plans. The applicant proposes to install a 30-inch wide by 36-inch tall two-sided MDO wood sign on the left side of the arch entryway and refurbish the existing middle wall-mounted sign to reflect the new tenant. The hanging sign will have a dark green painted background and gold-toned vinyl lettering and accents. A new metal and scroll black bracket will be installed in the mortar joints from which to hang the sign. The distance between the bottom of the sign and the sidewalk is 10 feet. The resurfaced wall-mounted sign will be made of aluminum composite with the use of the same color scheme as the projecting sign and will measure 13 by 28. Staff recommendation is for approval. Staff notes that the existing projecting sign next to the door needs to be removed since it was never approved by the HDC, nor is it of a design consistent with the design guidelines and is likely not to comply with height clearance requirements of the zoning ordinance. Is unlikely to be approved. Secretary Interior Standards number 9 and 10 apply. If you look at the materials that were submitted with the application, you have a photograph, an image of the projecting sign. There's also a photo mock-up of the projecting sign extending from the front of the building. On that photo mock-up, you'll see the other projecting sign, which is basically bracketed straight into the wall of the building. And I want to caution everyone that this body does not get into messaging on signs. So we're clear. But the fact is that particular sign, regardless of its content, would not meet any of the design standards as far as its construction and appearance. Then there's another photograph showing that across the front of the building, the location of the repurposed existing scroll top business sign. There's actually 3 of them across the front of the building. They're just repurposing one of the 3. So staff recommends approval with that one caveat that the one sign needs to be removed.
All right. Does our applicant have any further comments?
No, I don't. Thank you.
All right. Commission members, any questions, concerns?
I have one question. Oh, sorry. The building showing that there are it looks like there's 2 occupants in the building. My question would be, is it only 2 people or 2 businesses? Would they be open to, if there are more than that, of removing the scrolling front signage and consolidating that into something less, even though it's existing, a little less obvious to reduce the amount of signage on the face?
Are you talking about the Knisely or Knisely?
Well, they got
building signs?
you got the historical marker, you got the Nicely building, and then you got the 2 business signages. And now, even with the removal of the existing and the new sign, would they be interested, especially if there's more than just 2 occupant businesses in there, of reducing the overall signage amount just to clean up the front of the building?
Well, that's a question. Ultimately, it depends on future events, which I'm not, none of us are able to predict. I would think that in good faith, they would be willing to share some space there. I think their preference is the perpendicular sign for readability.
Let's see, it looks like there's at least 3 tenants in this building because the sign shows the nicely building underneath. It says Robinson and Robinson, which I guess is a law firm. And then you have the sign that the applicant is seeking to reface. And then you have nicely professional suites. So you have one sign that's for professional suites on the first floor, which I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it kind of appears that there's more than 2 tenants in the building. Dean, do you know anything about that?
I believe there are multiple. I don't know how many of them would require, I guess any of them that really require a sign and presence would have already addressed that. And it could be that where there are suites still available, that one of them then would take over one of the Nosley signs. And there again, that's conjecture on my part, but I think that would make sense.
Is the liquor board still in this building?
Yeah, but they're to the side and they have their own sign on the side.
That's
So they're
correct.
to the right of it. And that sign's not even visible on the front of the building.
Right.
I mean, I
The purpose of
honestly. Hmm?
The purpose of my question was only just not knowing how many occupants were using the building, but rather a way of consolidating it in a more simplified way instead of each tenant adding another name to the building and kind of mucking up the front.
So you're more worried about the front, but the sign that they're trying to approve is the one that's going to project from the side of the building. So that's really 2 different issues we would have to
No,
talk
I'm just-
about.
I'm just throwing that out there, Monica.
Okay.
I would think if the applicant would come back at a later date for additional signage, then there would have to be some consolidation at that point, because they're probably pushing real close to the maximum signage allowance on the building at that point.
Okay.
Got to be my guess that they would sometime down the line, down the road, come back and ask for a consolidation of more of the tenants on the sign. That way they can come back to us for another consent agenda or another application.
I concur.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
As far as the sign that the application is actually about, I have no problem with that as long, I agree that the one that's underneath it ought to go because it looks weird and, there's really no need to have both of them. One of them says everything they need to say. So as long as we're saying, let's take that down, I'm good to move on to approving it.
all right, commission members, everybody somewhat in agreement with that we can entertain a motion?
Yep.
All right, who's ever up?
Don't everyone speak at once.
Okay, I'll do it since you guys don't jump on it. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I've inspected the project plans and the property in question. If constructed in accordance with these plans, the project is compatible with the character of the district for the reasons that the sign will fit in, it's hung at the right height, and it goes with the historic look of the surrounding buildings. And therefore, it'll be generally in harmony with the architectural design guidelines for the downtown historic district and the character of the adjoining properties. Therefore, I move that HDC grant a certificate of appropriateness to the applicant for case number
2020-08.
2020-08. West Washington Street. Yep, I was looking in the wrong spot. HDC 2020-08.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, those opposed, motion carries. All right, I this point, we'll get your signed application back to you here in the next day or so. And
All right, carrier pigeons land here around noon, so if you can send it that way, we'll be watching for them.
okay. All right.
you.
Have a good day.
Thanks
All
so
right.
much.
Next case up is HDC 2020-10 for 7 East Washington Street for the Alexander House for window and facade alterations.
Jay, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm MJ Wojciechowski. I'm with Quinn Evans Architects. I'm working with NHP Foundation, the owner of 7 West Washington Street.
Okay. This is HDC case 2020-10. Yeah, Ms. MJ, and I'm sorry, pronounce your name again, please.
Wojciechowski.
Thank you. AIA.
Yes, thank you.
70 Washington Street. This is the Alexander House, downtown historic district. It's an A resource, a significant building to the character of the district, may qualify for National Register listing individually. Photographs of the building are on page 1 of your staff report. The applicant proposes comprehensive renovations to the exterior of the building, some of which are repair in kind and do not require HDC approval. See the attached list from the applicant. Items 1 through 7 apply. The 8th item, the handicap ramp, is in the street right of way and beyond the purview of the HDC. Those 7 items are first floor historic storefronts. They'll be refurbished in place. Non-historic metal cladding will be removed and existing components repaired or replicated. 2, ground floor non-historic storefronts. Non-historic aluminum storefront at 6 Public Square, the former coffee shop, currently office space. 8 Public Square residential entry and 7 East Washington residential entry replaced with thermally insulated storefronts. Number 3, first floor storefront infill. Non-historic infill where a storefront was originally located adjacent to the jeweler at 9 Public Square shall be removed. New thermally insulated storefront shall be installed similar to the original configuration of this opening. 4, residential unit windows. Non-historic vinyl windows shall be replaced with thermally insulated aluminum windows with historic profiles. Archtop windows, and then there's a proposal for the use of muttons to replicate the appearance of the windows that are readily available in many historic photos up to the 3rd floor level before you get to that one water table. Unit exhaust. This is number 5. Residential exhaust vents required by the International Mechanical Code shall be located on the east Kramer Alley and south elevations. No vents will be installed on the Washington Street or Public Street facades. All vents and louvers shall be finished in a custom color to blend with the adjacent brick masonry. 6, removal of non-historic louvers. Non-historic louvers below residential windows shall be removed. Insulated metal panels colored to blend with adjacent brick shall be installed at these former openings. HVAC wall mounting. Due to constraints of the existing structure, there are limited options for the location of the exterior HVAC equipment. Steel framing shall be installed on the south elevation, which has minimal visibility from the street level. The framing and piping shall be painted to blend with the adjacent brick. Heat pump equipment shall be mounted to this framing. And number 8, again, is that handicap ramp, which is in the street right of way and then therefore beyond the purview of this body. Staff recommendation is for approval, verifying that the framing and air conditioning units on the south side are painted the same color as the brick wall as to which they are mounted. This equipment should, to the greatest degree possible, given the size, weight, and location of the improvements, be mounted into mortar joints and disturb as little of the brick material as possible. However, this is pretty heavy stuff, so that may not be completely possible to avoid. In this case, damage to some brick is likely unavoidable. Also, the use of simulated true divided lights on the 2nd and 3rd floors are used, referred to in the description of work as an option. MJ, I wasn't quite clear on that one, the way the application was written, whether or not this is actually part of the proposal or some sort of fallback, but you'll need to talk about that.
Right.
But staff strongly encourages the requirement up to the 3rd floor level as for these windows. Lights should reflect the patterns that appear in readily available historic photos as they would have existed in the first half of the 20th century. Secretary Interior Standards 2, 5, 6, 7, and 9 are applicable here. And I have to apologize, I was going to go out and take photographs of the south wall of the building as visible from the intersection of Antietam and South Potomac. And that just didn't work out with my schedule this week, but I think you all have, probably most of you have access to Google Maps and Street View, so you can probably Google it up yourselves. But the south side of the building where all this equipment is going to be is fairly well, I mean, you're still going to see it, but it's still fairly well disguised given the location of the building. You're not going to see it from traffic on southbound Potomac Street or eastbound West Washington Street. The only place that you're really going to see it is if you're really on foot about a block or two south looking north. And even then, some of it's masked by the Bridge of Life building and other impediments to visibility there along that block. That's all I have.
Okay, I would like to address what you said about the muttons. And it is the case that right now we have those in the project as an alternate. Part of the reason we're going through costing exercises and the budget is very tight. So the difficulty is that we're trying to figure out what we can get in here. And the comfort of the residents is our top priority. So we're just trying to get a project that can actually happen. Right now, we have a tentative cost estimate back on the applied simulated divided lights, and it's 24,000. So hopefully that will come down. Hopefully we'll find money in the budget, but we had to keep this number because we've been whittling it away, trying to make this a buildable project that we can afford and finance. So that's why that is actually currently on alternate, and we understand that it's important to the city. And certainly it is better if we can put muttons on there. So that's that.
Anything else you want to add as far as just the description of the project?
So the work will be done in accordance with the Secretary of Interior standards. There's going to be brick cleaning, masonry repair, and as well as stone repair. But I think that the description you have there is adequate. Unless you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
All right, commission members, questions, comments, concerns?
Stan does have one comment. MJ, this project is going through the MHT for review and approval due to the use of various financing tools, correct?
Correct. So, well, what happened, we submitted it to MHT in 2016 and didn't get much. And then consecutively for the following 3 years, we submitted it and got progressively less. I've gone down and spoken with MHT multiple times trying to figure out how to make this a viable, financeable project. But at this point, we're not expecting anything from MHT in terms of funding. However, we are going to National Park Service, the federal, to get federal tax credits. So we've reviewed it with them, and that part 2 is in their hands right now, and they're reviewing that. So that's going to be very much a part of this whole process. And it's also going to get CDA funding as well.
I just pulled the front of the building up because when I was looking at the plans, I was like, you mentioned like a second door, and I'm looking at this going, I don't remember being a door there, and I walk by that building all the time. So you're proposing, so you guys are going to take this ugly non-historic window out that was Carson's and put the door back in there like they used to be?
Correct.
Is that what I'm understanding? Okay.
Yes.
So it'll be 4 different storefronts then, or well, the one is an entrance in the building, obviously. So,
right.
So there'll be 3 separate storefronts on the Hamilton building proper. And then you're going to redo that little squished in between building part as well.
Well, that building, so all that masonry will remain. But we are putting in new windows and a new entry door. So one of the things that we're achieving by putting a new door in the little coffee shop, that single-story space, we're going to raise the door up and make that whole space accessible. Unfortunately, none of that historic facade at the coffee shop remains. There used to be some large windows with muttons, and there were 2 sets of doors there. Those are long gone, and as you can see, it's just this.
Okay, when you say coffee shop, you're not talking, I mean, Canon is in a different building, so.
No, I'm sorry. Okay, the smushed little 1-story space that you were referring to there, that
Okay.
was really a coffee shop.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm sorry, I've been thinking of that as the coffee shop. You're right. It's adjacent to Canon Coffee Shop.
Okay.
So that space there that's back in that corner, we're going to make that accessible. And then the other thing that we're achieving so the space that is on the corner that was the jeweler's space.
Yeah.
Then we're going to take out those vitrines and that infill there that currently exists, make that an entry. We're laying it out as best we can figure as to what the original historic storefront layout was like.
Okay.
And then that also allows us to get an accessible entrance to that retail.
So essentially, you're trying to get another retail space in there, correct? Because right now, when you're inside of where the old Carson's used to be, there's like this weird access door inside that kind of goes into that space. So that's going to become its own little retail space then that another business could go into?
It might. Okay. Either it will be 2 or 1. So either they'll have the option to either combine them into a corner with that as it was with Carson's, or you can split them up.
Okay, but you will put like it looked originally with another door back in there.
Correct.
Okay.
There'll be 2 doors to that. There'll be one to the Carson's and then a door into that little space.
Yeah.
They can join different.
And then the door that now leads upstairs, you'll replace that with something that looks a little more historic. And then where you have that cape and blade now, that'll also be replaced to be more historic again.
We're going to preserve the underneath of right now that it's all covered with like this aluminum and vinyl. We're going to take that out and refurbish the storefront at Cape and Blade. From what we can tell, it looks like that storefront is actually there. It probably needed some repair, and it has some paint, lead paint, so they want to, clean that up. And
yeah,
I think it was just covered up for ease of maintenance, but in general, we can fix it.
Yeah, that'll be cool. That'll be nice to get that back to the way that it looked.
Mm-hmm.
And then that squishy building in between, you're just going to have to do whatever you can to make that somewhat historic looking, right?
Yeah, not much is going to happen with it.
No, that's just one of those odd little additions where you go, what were they thinking? But, there.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate. But...
Yeah. Okay, that's all I was wondering about.
And members, I have Google Street View pulled up on my phone. I'm just going to narrate you through it real quick. I'm at in front of the library. You really can't see this area on the south side of the building. I'm now in front of the Masonic Lodge. Again, you can't see it. Now down in front of the Walker Building, and you can't see it. Keep in mind, this is not from the sidewalk, but from the middle of the street where the camera was. I'm now in front of the Maryland Theater. Still can't see it. Bridge of Life, still can't see it. You really just, you have to be literally blocks away before you're going to really see anything on the recessed south side of the building.
In front of the old kind of rejoinder.
Yeah, you can see part of it from the over top of the roof of the old Snow White Grill, which is now the offices for Bridge of Life Church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but not much. I mean, who's going to look up there? You got trees there, and yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I think most of them are actually, I don't think they go all the way up to the top of the building. Let me just double check.
No, it stops after floor. And the building is 10 stories.
You know, the only place you'd probably be able to see any of that elevation is right there on the square, and it would be a very sharp angle to be looking at that south side, other than coming out of the parking garage, coming back up, I guess, the dual lane alley at this point, but you got, you know, all the TV dishes that are, you know, sitting there also.
That's correct. If you're standing on Potomac Street and you're right across the street from the new coffee shop, and you look back, you can catch a glimpse of it, but you have to really be looking for it.
There's not much opportunity anywhere on the building at this point to locate those condensers. So I mean, I'm not objectionable to, you know, to their location on that south side.
Yeah, it is a challenge.
All right, commission members, you want to weigh in on the muttons on the second and third floors? I know that's something we had kind of talked about at the workshop, you know, a couple weeks ago.
So have we approved those windows before, that height? Is that of what the windows that are proposed? Are they on our easy to approve list? The Quakers?
We did not check it against the pre-approval, won't even call it a pre-approval list, but a prior example list. We did not cross-check it, no.
I don't remember ever seeing that brand, so I was just wondering what they look like, you know, in terms of what their muttons, how much depth there is, but.
So they have a, this was actually, we talked to National Park Service specifically about this style. It does have sort of a putty edge, or it's got a little bevel around the perimeter of the sash.
Okay. I mean, if you're going for a grant from them, then they're gonna be a little stricter than we are anyway, so.
So the big difference is, the item that is sort of outstanding though is those muttons right now, because.
Are there original photos of what they used to be?
Yes, in fact, Stephen had one, and there were originally mullions in those windows. They were the actual true divided lights up the building.
Okay.
Were 6/6s, and there were some of the wider ones were 8/8s, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
But that's what we need to do then, right?
That would be
Well,
good.
at the workshop, we discussed just doing the first three floors, or, you know, second and third floor, because that was closest to the street level. Above that, which is basically above that lower, for lack of a better description, cornice line, so to speak, there on the building. At least take it to that level, and then the windows above, since at this point the windows that are currently there did not have those muttons in them. So I think the compromise that we had agreed to at the workshop was, you know, up, you know, the second and third floors would have the muttons in the window.
I think that's exactly what we agreed to. Second and third floor would have muttons. Up above that, it would be just a single 1/1.
That's what we talked about, correct?
Yes.
If you're gonna go restore, why wouldn't you just, I wasn't at the workshop, so I would have at least go to that little white thing that goes across the front there. So go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 floors up until you have that stone ledge going across, but.
Right, and that's understandable. The reason why it's an alternate right now is because it's a significant.
The cost.
And I think we were only looking at the muttons on the two street side elevations.
Yeah.
That's correct.
I mean, I'm only looking at, right now, it's just because I'm making myself dizzy going around the building, but having it up on Google Maps, I'm only looking at the one that's in the square. I think from the street side, as you're driving down Washington Street, nobody's gonna look behind unless you're standing. That side wouldn't concern me as much. I think the pretty side that's on the front, that has the storefronts, that's in the square, I would prefer seeing Muttons at least going to the thing across, and then maybe on the side that's not as visible, because people drive down that street and it's tighter. You don't really spend time standing there looking up. There I'd be fine not going as high up. But that's just my opinion. And everybody's quiet.
Did we ever get information for the architect on the arch top windows from the people up on North Potomac Street who redid their windows?
You did send me information about, yes, actually it was sent for the manufacturer who did those.
I was just checking, that's all.
Right. We are putting arch top windows on the second floor where there currently arches there. They currently actually, the current configuration as it exists, the windows that are installed are rectangular, but we're going back and putting the arch tops.
Okay. Leslie, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we could consider this. We know that we want to make the city more walkable, so just saying we're driving by the building may not be enough, but that's a side note. I would like to know if we would like to consider that the area on the second floor that's kind of bordered by the two brick cornice type and facade that's above the white tall stone that's like bordering windows, because they have those, at least from the picture, this enlarged framing around the windows, would we be able to find a way to not require the mullions on those because they have their own other appeal at such a height? Would it be as a way of getting around, I don't want to say the financial aspect of it, but if that's the holdup on that two fronts, to ensure that the ground floor and the floor above it keep that look as what people's eye focus is, how far can we stretch on that? I'd just like to talk about that a little bit.
Are you talking about the square view or the view on Washington?
Both of them. I'm talking about the square on the corner at Potomac and Washington, both sides of the line of, I guess you call it the second floor, ground floor, first floor, second floor. That's the floor I'm talking about. Because of its height from the ground and the architectural elements where it has this bordering effect and these strong corners and strong contrast in colors, is there a forgiveness for not having that requirement on those if we're not going to have them on the higher floors anyways? Just want to get some feedback.
I think before I can put input on that one, I have a question on the side on Washington, that stuff that has that siding on it, like those kind of build out things that are really ugly. Will those come down and are you refacing that? Or are those staying? Because they're an eyesore. So if we're talking about making everything above it pretty, if that stays, then on Washington Street, to me, it doesn't make a difference. If, however, that comes off and all of that is being refurbished and then it's looking nice going up, then I think it needs to look nice going up, at least until we crane our necks and don't see it, which would then be the third or fourth floor. So third or fourth floor.
If we had our choice, if we had the budget, the first thing we would change would be those, as you call them, eyesore bump outs on the sidewalk on Washington. That was something we really wanted to do, but there just isn't any in the budget.
So they're staying. Okay. So given that, Leslie, like I think on the Washington side, I would be more forgiving on the windows that are more visible about maybe just going 1 or 2 floors up with the muttons and then forget the rest, because you don't even look at the building there, because that is such a, ugh, I want to get past that section. You're not going to stop and look up at the building. Whereas in the square side, we hang out there all the time. Like if you're going downtown, you're looking up at that building from one direction or another, walking down Washington Street, driving down Washington Street. To me, that side is a lot more visible. That is like the focal point of that entire building, just because of the way the direction of the street goes. When events are going on in the square, we look up in the sky. That is the side of the building that we constantly see. So to me, it's more important to go all the way, at least up to that ledge where then only 2 floors are left, with the windows as original as possible, and then saving money on the side on Washington Street and not going as high up. So maybe taking some of the money on the Washington side and sticking it on the Potomac side.
Well, the area that we're talking about, those bump outs, that's really not in the contract to begin with. So that,
But it's a visual, and that's why I asked about it.
Right. No, understood.
Yeah, there's so much paperwork there. I looked at it all, but with the drawings being small, it was just easier to ask. It's just, if we're talking about visual aspects of it, that plays into it, in my opinion.
Looking at the drawings, what was submitted or looked at, I don't remember which sheet I'm looking at right now, but the G004, the little elevations and stuff, it has those windows, I guess first floor, second floor, or second and third floor, depending on whether you consider ground floor the first floor or not. I think, that's what we kind of agreed to from the workshop. So, I have no objection to what's shown there. I'd certainly like to see it installed, regardless of the alternate at that point. I don't know if the muttons could be added later on. I don't know if, is it a applied grill? Or is it actually fabricated with the window? I'm not as familiar with that window manufacturer at this point, so I don't know, how that window comes in.
Right. So the design, the way the window would be fabricated is it is part of the manufacture of the window. There's an interior and an exterior grille, and also a spacer in the glazing, so that when you look at it, it actually is.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't make it to that workshop. I'm just saying that if you're going to spend a certain amount of money anyway, and you budgeted for that, then I would rather have you take what you're going to stick on the side, whatever everybody else, suggested in the workshop, in those higher, and only go up like 2 stories on the side of the Washington side, and take that money and put the better windows on the front side of Potomac Street up to that grill, gray line going across the front there, that ledge, because that is your more visible side. And since you're replacing the original storefronts, and it's going to look fantastic. So it would be nice to see grills at least going up to the ledge there, and then do less of it on the Washington side, because people are not going to stop and look up there as much, especially with keeping those old bump out thingies there. So just visually speaking, if you can allocate the better windows to the front rather than the side, would be my preference, but I'll go with whatever we're voting on.
Keep in mind, procedurally, folks, what you have is you can't change the applicant's application, and they can do it.
That's right.
but of course, they can gauge whether or not they think the application is going to be approved and amend the application to make it more approvable to them or to you. But right now, the application is for no grills.
No grills at all?
No, it's considered, they're identifying it as an alternate, which I guess, MJ, you would characterize maybe as a backup plan in order to get approved. I'm not exactly sure. I'll leave that to MJ to describe. But the actual application is for 1/1s. You can approve that or you can deny it. But if MJ gets the idea that you may not approve it unless you put grills, she can always amend the application to put the grills in. But just keep in mind procedurally, you vote on the application that's in front of you. Unless MJ chooses to amend the application, what's in front of you is 1/1.
Yeah, that is effectively the application because it's an alternate. Now, we would like to add the grills if possible, but it's something that we're trying to make the budget work on. So it is an alternate. And so your description of it effectively is correct.
So could we vote on it saying that we would prefer to see the muttons? I mean, the grills, could we saying we'll approve the alternate, but we would like, if their budget allows, to see the grills?
I think that's gonna work.
Alternate application.
What is in front of you is
What about them all?
1/1.
Even though it's an alternate application.
Yes, you could, let me think about this. It's identified as an alternate. If you're willing to give them approval for 1/1, that's probably what you're gonna find. You're probably gonna get that is 1/1. And encouraging or approving a backup, all that does is it allows them to move forward with putting in grills if they decide later that they are going to do that. But expressing a preference holds no weight in this approval because ultimately what the primary application is going to be is 1/1.
Okay.
Let's see.
Hmm.
That's good.
So why call it an alternate? Why not just say, okay, this is our application, we have 1/1 and that's it? I mean, I thought we were talking about grills the whole time. Okay.
Yeah, the reason why it's an alternate, we would like to put it in, the issue is money. And so as you know, right now, we're in a very weird space in time in terms of construction funding and any funding for anything really. So this project, we're going to submit it for permit, and then it's going through the CDA process to get funding. And it's going to be a couple months out before we're actually looking at the beginning of construction. And so we don't know what the situation is going to be a couple months out. We're actually a little bit optimistic that the labor market's going to be a lot better and we might actually get the prices in. But right now it's a little hard to say. I mean, obviously everything is unpredictable. So we're trying to figure out how to make it work. We really want to get this project to happen.
I just want the board to be clear on what it would be voting on. If you vote on 1/1 with the backup option, it puts all of the, for lack of the word, leverage or decision-making on the applicant. You have no leverage at that point. If you approve it with 1/1, you can't go back later and say, well, now we want grills. You've approved it with 1/1, leaving it to the applicant to decide whether or not they will do the grills.
Okay.
Can I just ask something, not about the grills? Because I can't remember, and I was just reviewing the application one more time. With the change to the exterior AC units, this completely eliminates all window units. Is my memory correct on that? Okay, thank you.
Are we good?
Commission, well, I guess if everybody's in agreement of the application or accepting as is, I haven't heard opposition against that. If commission members are ready to vote on the application, we'll entertain a motion.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I've inspected the project plans and the property in question. If constructed in accordance with these plans, the project is compatible with the character of the districts for the reasons that the applicant will be restoring a lot of the historical aspects that were there, replacing storefronts to make them go back in time a little bit more, and restoring the building to generally be in harmony with the architectural design guidelines for the downtown historic district and the character of the adjoining properties. Therefore, I move that the HDC grant a certificate of appropriateness for the applicant of case number, scroll up, HDC 2020-10.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion?
So we're clear, the motion is to approve it as submitted. As
Yeah.
submitted means
As submitted.
windows with the option when the applicant to put the grills in if they choose to do so later.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And we certainly would encourage the applicant to try to push for those, but
I understand.
that said, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Appreciate you bearing with us on this. It's a little more cumbersome doing it this way, but I think we've gotten through it.
I appreciate you all coming together in this format to make it happen.
It's unusual.
Yes, it is.
I kind of like it.
There are conveniences.
Yes, they are.
All right. Thank you for your time. We'll move on then. There are no workshops scheduled. Do we have any new business that needs to be brought before the commission? Hearing none. Any old business that needs to be brought before the commission?
Mr. Chairman, we didn't do anything up to this point in preparation for this meeting for Preservation Month. Given the circumstances in the world, nobody's going to have a ceremony in May anyway. So keep thinking about potential honorees, and we'll pick up back on that at the next meeting or the meeting following.
All right. Any other old business?
Michael, I sent an email to Deb about the black wrought iron fence the woman put around the property. I think it was 1011 Hamilton Boulevard, where she replaced an old wood fence. This is a real nice fence and an improvement to the area. Really looks good.
Okay, great.
Where was this? 1011?
Now, it was the house on the corner of Hamilton and, oh Lord, right across from Saggy's house, diagonal. I can't think what the name of the street is.
We approved the meeting ago.
Yeah, we had approved that, I believe, didn't we?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it really looks good.
Okay.
Now, if we could just get Saggy to move faster, we'd be in good shape.
All right. Okay, any other old business? Hearing none, any announcements that need to be made? All right, hearing none, I guess it's a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Sure.
All right.
Second.
All right, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time and patience.